Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to install macOS Sonoma on any Windows laptop. Now here are the requirements. First, we need macOS Sonoma Installer File, we need Balena Etcher, we need Opencore EFI configuration file, we need ProperTree, we need Explorer++, we need Gen SMBIOS, we need MiniTool Partition Wizard, and we need Opencore Configurator. Now I'll provide the links to each and every one of these softwares in the video description so you can download yourself. Now the first thing we have to do is check the CPU you are using in order to know which EFI to download. Now hold Ctrl Shift Escape to open Task Manager. Now let's click on Performance and then click on your CPU, and right here you can see the name. In my case, this is Intel Core i3-8130, which means this is an 8th gen processor starting with 8. Now 8th gen processors are called Coffee Lake, so we're going to download EFI for Coffee Lake. So make sure to check the processor and the code name as well. Now for those using AMD, you're all going to download the same EFI file. Now let's head to our browser to download the required files. Now the first file we're going to download is macOS Sonoma Installer File, and you can find it on eTechbox. I'll provide the link to this file in the video description. So head to this page and then click on Download Sonoma, and it should take you to MediaFire where you can download. The file size is around 15.8 gigabytes, so you know what to expect. I already have this file downloaded, so I'm just going to cancel. Next, we are going to download Balena Etcher. So click on the first link to balena.io and then click on Download Etcher. Now download for Windows since we are using a Windows PC. Next, we are going to download ProperTree. Now click on the first link that heads to GitHub. Click on Code and then download zip. Next, we are going to download Explorer++. Click on the link to explorer++.com and then download 64 bits. Next, we are going to download Gen SMBIOS. Click on the link to GitHub as well. Click on Code and then download zip. Next, we are going to download MiniTool Partition Wizard. Click on the link to MiniTool Partition Wizard. Now look at the top right and you should find Download Partition Wizard. Click on the free edition and it should start downloading. We also have to download Opencore Configurator. So search for Opencore Configurator eTechbox. Click on the first link to eTechbox and then click on the download button and it should start downloading. And lastly, we have to download our Opencore EFI configuration file. I'm going to provide this link in the video description. Now, there are 3 ways you can get Opencore EFI. First, you can use a Prebuilt EFI from eTechbox. You can see EFI for desktop computers and for laptops as well. Now, you could choose whichever based on your code name and that should be fine. The second way is building EFI from scratch. I made a video on how to build a custom EFI from scratch using Opencore guide. And lastly, you can request for a custom EFI by heading to eTechbox.com and then click on Custom EFI. Now here you can request for a custom EFI based on your hardware, so you can specify the hardware you're using and you should get a custom EFI from eTechbox. So whichever you prefer. If you want to use a Prebuilt EFI from eTechbox, then you can download one of the Prebuilt EFI which should work. If that doesn't work, you could build your EFI from scratch, and there is a video to that in the video description. And lastly, you can request for a custom EFI from eTechbox. So whichever you prefer. But for this video, we are going to be downloading a Prebuilt EFI from eTechbox, and that is what we're going to use for the installation. Now let's head back to the previous page for Prebuilt EFI. And right here, we're going to download EFI for Opencore laptop. And we're going to download EFI for Coffee Lake since we are using an 8th gen processor. So let's click on the download button for Coffee Lake, which is 8th gen. And it should take us here, and then we can click on download. Now you should download the Prebuilt EFI based on the processor you're using, and that was why we checked the code name earlier. Now after downloading everything we need, we can close our browser and then open our download folder. And here we go. This is Balena Etcher. This is our EFI. This is Explorer++. This is Gen SMBIOS. This is Opencore Configurator. This is ProperTree. This is MiniTool Partition Wizard, and this is our macOS Sonoma Installer File. Now all the links to these files are provided in the video description. Now let's double click on Balena Etcher to run. Now we need at least a 32 gig flash drive to create a bootable drive, so make sure you have one available. Now click on Flash from File and then locate your download folder. Select our macOS Sonoma Installer File right there. Now let's click on Open and then click on Select Target. Now connect your flash drive and then select it right here and then click on Select One. Now click on Flash. Now this should take around 20 to 30 minutes. It all depends on the read and write speed of a flash drive. Now while this is running, we can work on other things. So let's head back to our download folder. Now we are going to extract our EFI configuration file. We're also going to extract ProperTree. And we are going to extract Gen SMBIOS. Now we can delete the zip since we no longer need them. Now let's open our EFI configuration file. Open, and you can see boot and OC. If you open boot, you should see the boot files needed, which is bootx64. And under OC, we're going to see our configuration files. Our config right there, plist, is our configuration file which will be needed for most of this installation. So we're going to configure that based on our hardware. So let's go to our download folder and then open ProperTree. Open ProperTree master and then run ProperTree Windows batch file by double clicking on it. Now click on File under ProperTree right here. Open. Now locate your download folder and then locate your EFI folder which we extracted. Open EFI again and then go to OC. Now select config, which is our configuration file, and then open. So you can see lots of settings here, from ACPI to booter to device property to kernel and the rest of them. Now let's go to platform information, which is platform info. Under platform info, you should see generic, and under generic we can see a system product name, which is the Mac we are trying to mirror. In this case, this is MacBook Pro 16,4. So we're going to generate a unique serial for MacBook Pro 16,4, which should match with our hardware. Now it may be different in your case depending on the CPU you're using. I'm going to provide a link in the video description on how to choose an SMBIOS, but in my case I'm using MacBook Pro 16,4. You can also see the serial number as well, and you can see the UUID. Now we can close ProperTree and then head back to our download folder. Let's open Gen SMBIOS. Open, and then double click on the Windows batch file for Gen SMBIOS to open. Now select one to install and update Mac serial and then hit enter. Hit enter to go back and then enter 2 to select our configuration file and hit enter. Now let's head to our EFI folder. So let's go to downloads, EFI, open, go to OC. Now let's drag our configuration file, config, drag and drop it on Gen SMBIOS and then hit enter. Now we're going to generate unique serial by entering 3 and then hit enter, and then we can paste the product name right there. In my case it is MacBook Pro 16,4 and then hit enter. Now it should be different depending on the processor you're using. I'm going to provide a guide on the screen and in the video description. So you can see a unique serial generated, board serial and the rest of them. Hit enter to return, and then we can close Gen SMBIOS. Now let's head back to our download folder and then let's open our EFI folder. Open, Now let's go to OC and then Kext. Now Kext are like drivers. If you look down here, you're going to see 3 Kext for our mouse and keyboard, which is Voodoo, 2C, and 2CHID and PS2 controller. Now we don't need 3 of them, and the one I need for my system is not even there. Now let's go to Device Manager on Windows to check the Kext we need. Now if I open keyboard, I'm going to see here, you can see PS2 keyboard, and under mice we can see LAN clickpad. So we need Kext for PS2 keyboard and LAN clickpad. Now we already have PS2 controller. Now we just have to download Kext for our LAN clickpad. Now you can see under Dotania guide, link in description, you can see under laptop input, for those using LAN trackpad, you need Voodoo SMBIOS instead of wherever is there. So we're going to download Voodoo SMBIOS, which is what our system needs. So let's click on it and it should take us to GitHub, and then we can download the latest release. Right there you can see Voodoo SMBIOS zip. Now let's download. Now we can close this and then open our download folder. Now let's extract Voodoo SMBIOS. Extract files. Open the extracted folder. Open, and you should find Kext. Open. Now this is the file we need. You can see voodoo smbios.kext. Let's copy this file. Now let's go to our EFI, OC, Kext, and then we can paste it there. So what we basically need is SMBIOS and PS2 controller. So we're going to delete 2CHID and 2C so it doesn't conflict with each other. As a matter of fact, I've tested them and it wouldn't boot if you have everything there. Now we can go back to our download folder and then go to ProperTree. Let's run ProperTree. Now let's open our config again. This time we're going to click on File and then OC snapshot, which is going to take a snapshot of our configuration folder and add the new Kext we just added into our configuration. So let's select folder and then Ctrl S to save. Now we can close ProperTree, head back to our download folder. Now we can delete some of these softwares we've already used and clean up our download folder. Now we just have to wait for Balena Etcher to finish writing to our flash drive so we can proceed with the installation. After creating the bootable drive with Balena Etcher, we can head back to our download folder and then install MiniTool Partition wizard right there. Continue with the free edition. Click on Finish to launch. So disk 1 right here is my backup drive, 1 terabyte. Disk 2 is my boot drive with 128 gig. And disk 3 right here is our removable flash drive. Now if you check by the right, you can see EFI partition on our flash drive. Now right click and then change letter so we can assign a letter to the EFI partition. Now you can give it whatever letter you want. I'm just going to call it X. Now take note of the letter, we will need it later. Now after doing that, look by the right and you should see an unallocated partition. Right click on that unallocated partition and then create a new volume. Click on yes. Now you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it OCC. Now we're going to copy Opencore Configurator there. So let's click on OK. Now on disk 2 right here, I can't install macOS because I have just 120 gig and I'm using 61%. The remaining storage is not up to 50 gig. And on disk 1 right here, I have around 930 gig in this partition and I'm using only 28%. So I can install macOS there. Now you can install macOS alongside Windows, which is what I'll be doing, or you can just get rid of Windows and install macOS. So let's right click on that drive and then click on split and then set how much storage you want to give to macOS, which is on the right and it is blue. You can see G right there. So I'm going to give macOS around 220 gig. Click on OK. Now we can see right there G, which has 220 gig, and that is where we're going to install macOS. Now let's right click and then let's change the name of that drive by clicking on label. We can name it something like macOS so we can easily recognize it. So I'm going to call it macOS 14 and and then click on OK. Now we can click on apply down there to apply all the changes we've made, and then click on yes. Now let's close MiniTool Partition and then head back to our download folder. Now I omitted a step which you have to do. Copy Opencore Configurator OCC and then paste it in the partition we created in our flash drive OCC right here, and then you can proceed with the rest of the video. Now let's extract Explorer++. Open the extracted folder. Let's run Explorer++ as administrator, so just right click and run as admin. Now go to this PC and then locate our EFI X partition. Now select everything inside and delete. Now go back to our download folder and we can open our EFI folder and then copy EFI right here. Now make sure you copy it correctly. If you open it, you should see boot and OC. Now we can head back to this PC and then open EFI X partition. Now let's paste it there. Now we can close Explorer++, restart our PC and begin the installation. Hold escape key to open startup menu and then you can boot into your BIOS. First, we are going to disable secure boot by going to boot options. Now under boot options, you should find secure boot. Now click on clear all secure boot keys and then disable secure boot. I already have that cleared. Now we can go back and then go to security settings. We're also going to disable Intel software guard extensions, so make sure it is disabled, and then change your SATA setup from RAID to AACR if you have that in your BIOS. Now we can save changes and then exit. We are going to hold F9 to show our boot options. It may be different depending on the PC you're using. We are going to select USB hard drive, which is our SanDisk flash drive. Hit enter. First, we are going to reset NVRAM. So let's go to reset NVRAM. Hit enter. And then we're going to go back and you can see Opencore option right there. Hit enter. Now we're going to go to install macOS Sonoma and then hit enter. Now this should take around 5 to 10 minutes to boot for the first time, and then we can begin the installation. Set a language for the installation and then continue. Now we're going to go to disk utility so we can erase the drive and then install macOS. So let's go to disk utility and then continue. Now if you look up there, you can see a drive called macOS 14, which is the partition we erased and kept for macOS. So we are just going to click on erase by the side right there, and then set the format to APFS, which is the format macOS recognizes, and then erase. Click on done. Now let's close this page. Click on install macOS Sonoma. Continue. Continue. Agree to the terms of service. Now select macOS 14, which is the partition we erased, and then continue. Now this should take around an hour to install. It may be different depending on your hardware and the drive you're using as well. It may restart severally while installing, but you just have to wait. Successfully installed after about an hour. Now select your country and continue. Set everything else based on your personal preference, so we can just proceed with the rest of them. Set up a full name and password for your Mac. You can choose between the light or dark theme. I'm just going to go with auto. You could change this later in your settings. Also set up your keyboard. And the installation is complete. Now if you go to about this Mac, you can see that everything is showing correctly. From our processor, our iGPU is also showing as well, and you can see the version macOS Sonoma 14.5. Our serial number is also showing right there. We can sign into our Apple account and use Apple services. Now one last thing, our boot files is currently in our flash drive, so we have to move it from our flash drive to our main drive, and to do that we need Opencore Configurator. So let's open OCC on our desktop and then drag Opencore Configurator and then drop it on the desktop. Now let's double click on OCC, which is our Opencore Configurator, to extract. Now let's run Opencore Configurator. Let's close this window right here. Now look at the top right, you should see Opencore Configurator icon. Click on it and you're going to see EFI on our flash drive and on our main drive. Skynix, which is our SSD, and that's the partition. And you can see EFI on our flash drive, Cruiser Blade. So let's mount the EFI on our flash drive, which contains our boot files. You can see boot partition. Mount partition. Enter your password to confirm. Let's close this. Head back and then open partition. And it should open the EFI of our flash drive, which contains our boot files. Also go back and then mount the partition on our main drive and open partition as well. So here we go. Now if you open the EFI on our main drive, you can see boot and Microsoft, which is our boot files. So open the EFI on our flash drive, and then if you open OC, you can see our configuration files right there. So let's just copy everything in our flash drive, EFI partition, boot and OC, and then paste it in our main drive. If you got any prompts to replace, kindly click on replace. And that's all basically. Now we can close everything. Eject install macOS Sonoma from our desktop. Eject all. Now we can remove our flash drive, restart our PC, and then boot into macOS without the flash drive. You now have the option to select between Windows and macOS when booting. So basically, this is how to install macOS Sonoma on any Windows laptop. If this video was helpful, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notification. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.